On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina.
I'm here with Alex Tavarez of the New York Mets organization. Alex, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm the Latin American Performance Coach Coordinator with the New York Mets. Going into my 8th season now with the New York Mets organization, going into my 3rd in this current role. So far, more than anything, thank you for the opportunity to be here and kind of be a part of this and kind of share my story and stuff. But yeah, looking forward to this.
So when you got into pro ball, you've been Mets the whole way, no other teams or anything?
All the way through. Yeah, started off 8 years ago. They gave me my first opportunity, and from there, just kind of been developing and moving up through the system. So as long as I have an opportunity to grow and continue to move forward, I'm going to keep pushing that way. So, they've given me a lot of opportunities. They've opened the doors for me in a lot of ways. So nothing but grateful and continuing to push forward within the organization.
So you say Latin American Performance Coach Coordinator. Yeah. Is there a difference there between that and like a regular Latin American coordinator, or is it like you're developing the Latin American staff down there as well as the players? Like, tell me a little bit about that role that you're in right now.
Essentially, it is the Latin American coordinator. Our department now, they switched it over from SNC, so now we're performance coaches. So not necessarily SNC coaches. So moving in that direction, more so based as a performance as a whole. So the department as a whole, everything that's embedded within it, whether it be nutrition, whether it be ATC, your PTs, mental skills, our department as SNC. So it's everything under one umbrella, being the performance department. And we made that switch, I believe it's been 2 years now. So yeah, my role is Latin America. I oversee everything in the Dominican Republic. Essentially oversee and make sure that what we're doing in the States is being taken care of, and that's what we're doing in the Dominican. So we have everybody's got their complex over there, but we have our complex over there in Boca Chica. Probably oversee about 110 to 120 athletes, along with we have 3 SNC coaches over there. So I'm in charge of making sure that everything kind of runs smoothly over there, all the testing and all that stuff, data collection, SNC programming, all that with those guys, and then also helping develop our staff and bring them up to par as well with everything that we got going on.
I always like talking to Latin American guys. I get along with all the Latin players really well, and I've said this many times on the podcast. I just love being around them, their energy, and their ability to kind of jab at you and joke. So I always like to talk to guys that get to go over there. Personally, I've never been over there, and it's something that I've always wanted to do in my professional baseball life. How often are you going to the DR? I'm assuming you're centered in Florida, and then you kind of just fly back and forth. So how frequently do you go down there? Maybe pre-COVID times, it might be a little different now, but in a normal environment, how often do you go down there?
Yeah, so I'm based out of Port St. Lucie. I go into our facility there every day, and I help out with whatever we got going on at the facility, whether it be, just helping out with different camps and stuff. And usually I assist with the GCL as well. This year it's going to be a little bit more focused and geared towards just overseeing Latin America. But as of right now, I go over there about once a month. So like every 4 to 6 weeks is when I'm going to the Dominican. I usually try to hit it in phases where it's like a prime time. So usually that pre-spring training, we have our players that are going to be reporting to spring training from the Dominican. So like I'll go see them, make sure that they're ready prior to getting to US spring training. Then we have like their spring training, their instructional league, stuff like that. So usually those key points is when I'll make my trips over there to make sure, open up those camps, get things rolling. And then I'll usually go towards the end for any last minute data collection or whatever we need to do before those guys split to either being in season or going into an off season or whatever the case may be. But usually every about 4 to 6 weeks is when I'm headed down there. and you got to get yourself over there, my man. It's a really good experience. I think anybody that has the opportunity to go over there and see the complex, it's really a blessing because it's a whole nother monster over there. Those guys, the way that atmosphere and that ambiance is over there, it's completely different. I mean, over there, I'm is though in Florida. Grew up in the States and everything like that, but I did spend a lot of time going to visit cousins and family like that in Puerto Rico. So always having that atmosphere of growing up around baseball in Latin America. When you get over there, it's a lot of fun. Those guys get the music going. They're always dancing. They're always having a lot of fun. They mess around with each other and stuff. But baseball over there, it's a cultural thing. So it is a lot of fun. It's really exciting.
Yeah, honestly, everybody I've talked to has kind of said the same thing. Is like when you go over there, you really see how fortunate you are to have certain things in the States, even as simple as like Wi-Fi or hot water or things like that. And I think for me, like I've never been there, but I understand it enough that like when they come here, their culture is different. And I accept them. I let them be themselves in the weight room with me. And I don't take myself too seriously when they make fun of me. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I agree. I am a little stupid sometimes or whatever, and it helps me to connect with them. And I think if I could get there, man, it would just take those relationships to the next level for me. Like I said, everybody I talk to has said the exact same thing. Like when you go over there, like you really, really understand where these guys come from. And when they come to the States, how different their cultures are. And, a lot of those young guys, when they come to the States, they do things and you're like, why are you doing that? Like, This is not how we do things, but they've never been to the States. They know their culture. And so when I was with the Pirates, we had one of the guys that all the Latinos called him Papa Juan because he's like their big brother, their tío, however you want to look at it. And when they'd come to the States, he would help them transition. He would speak Spanish with them. He would show them how to do things, keep them in line. And I'd imagine it's probably the same for you, right? Like you go down there every 4 to 6 weeks, like you said, you get to know those guys. And then when they come stateside, they probably lean on you more than some other people for help because they don't know when they get here.
No, I think that's been one of the biggest things that last year or pre-COVID when I was assisting with the GCL and everything, that was one of the better parts of having that transitional phase because once it was their first time being in the States, they had somebody that they were used to being around. They had somebody that they were used to working with, and it kind of helped assist with that transition over to the States. But yeah, I mean, having the opportunity to work over there, you really start to see their culture, where it is that they come from. Unfortunately, they're not necessarily as blessed as we are here in the States with a lot of things. And these guys are also very young. I think that's the biggest thing that guys need to understand too, that we see these guys in the States and yeah, they're professionals and they're having the opportunity to play professional baseball, but realistically these guys are 17 years old, 16 years old. They're some of them sophomore, juniors in high school here in the States. They're the education isn't necessarily the same either. So the way that we communicate, the way that you deliver a message and all that stuff, like all those types of things need to be taken into consideration, and they play a big role. Some things that might come naturally to us here in the States isn't necessarily the same for a guy that's coming from the Dominican. They haven't seen a lot of things. They haven't been exposed to a lot of stuff. Just overall training age, here in the States, there's high schools now that got some better programs in some, universities. So, these guys, they may not have been brought up in a weight room. They've never really seen a strength coach or a weight program or anything that was like set for conditioning. They would just go out to the field, they'd hit, they'd play ball, and that was it. So a lot of that stuff needs to be taken into consideration. It is a lot of the things that we think about when we do their programming or, taking into consideration when they are transferring over to us. So it plays a big role.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing I've seen with a lot of those young guys is like they're just baseball players over there. They just play ball all the time, and their exposure to lifting is really not that much. Where, like you said, in the States here, like I used to work private setting. I had like 9-year-old kids lifting weights with me, and like It's gotten to the point where like baseball specific training for the youth is a real thing stateside, and then like a lot of these kids come in at that high school age, and they've got 3, 4, 5 years of strength training under their belt where a lot of these Latin guys come in and they're super raw. They just don't have a training age, but they go out and they play the game, and it's just different. And I would imagine that it, like you said, it all goes into, it's all factored in with the programming aspect.
Yeah. No, and I think the biggest thing though is that when they do get into it though, like they really buy in. It's a thing that, they love the game, they love the sport itself, but once they start getting into the actual programming and the weight room sessions and stuff, they buy into it. You know what I'm saying? And it may not be something that they necessarily grasp towards at first, because it's something that might be a little bit intimidating because it is different. But once they do start getting that piece of it, they understand and they realize that it is something that's going to help benefit them in their future. So they really buy in, and they go after it. I mean, those guys, like I said, it's a lot of fun to be with them in the weight room. You get the music pumping in there with those guys, they're dancing with each other and stuff like that, but they're still working hard. It's a good time.
Yeah, like you said, as soon as they see the benefit and the fact that, hey, we're going to have to do this our whole careers, if we're going to make it to the big leagues, look at all these big leaguers that are doing this. They buy in, and honestly, a lot of them make a lot of gains really fast, right? And it's cool to see. And like you said, you get in there and they're getting after it. And I love they come in with their gloves on, right? And I'm like, why are you working out in gloves? Give them a hard time. Hey, Poppy, don't mess with me right now. I'm focused. I'm locked in. And you're like, all right, you do your thing, man. And it's cool to see them mature and grow up both in the weight room and just into the American culture and kind of adopt that. And then by the time they get up to AA, AAA, big leagues, their English is really good. They understand the States. Like they can, honestly, a lot of them have their own routines and you don't have to do anything. They just come in, they get to work. They're all about their business, and then they like to have a good time when it's appropriate.
I think for us, that's one of the biggest things that we try to do is set that foundation for the guys. You know what I'm saying? Get them into routines and stuff. A lot of the guys, they don't necessarily, it's not that they don't want to do certain things. It's just they don't know what to do. So like we take the time to really just shut everything down, and we get them to do like that activation period, bring them into the weight room. Listen, this is what we're going to do. We got a lacrosse ball, we got a foam roller, we got a green band, mini bands, whatever, and take them through those phases, teach them different exercises, different things they can do. And we do it as a group at once, so that they can all start doing a little bit of everything. And then eventually they start to figure out, hey, I kind of like this. I like the foam roller. I like doing this with the lacrosse ball or whatever. And then eventually they start building out their own routines, their own programs. And by the time they get it to the States, it's not something that they're doing for the first time or seeing for the first time. And it's important that it's the same thing with the weight room, the structure of the weight room, the structure of the conditioning sessions, all those types of things. We mimic and replicate to the best that we can of what we're going to do in the States, so that when they come here, it's not night and day for them. They're not getting hit, with the side, and they're like, oh man, what's going on? What is this? This is fast. The game itself is going to be a transition itself, and if we can control other factors and different variables, we want to help with that as much as we can. But yeah, I mean, these guys, they got their own little things. I love the batting gloves and stuff like that. My biggest pet peeve is when they come and they start wrapping towels around the barbell so they can squat. I take that off right away. They're always trying to put those pads and stuff on that.
The neck pad for squatting, yeah, all the time.
Yeah, no sir, we're putting bar on you, man.
No, Poppy, I can't do it. I'm like, you can, I promise.
They're squinting and making faces. I'm like, you'll be all right.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, honestly, there's a point to be had there of even not with Latin players, of just any coach at any affiliate of. I had this talk with somebody the other day on the podcast. Is like, the more that you can lock a player in on their strength and conditioning routine, their conditioning routine, the soft tissue work, the activation work, when they move up levels, there's more outside stressors, there's more media involved, there's more family, there's more friends, there's more distractions that come with those movements. And the thing is, if we know we send them up as ready as they can be for that strength and conditioning program at the next level, we've done our jobs, right? Because that's one less stressor that they have to worry about. Where if I'm in AA and I send a guy to AAA and the AAA program's totally different than what he was doing in AA, and he's not ready for it, that's just putting more stress on his plate. So even again, obviously it applies to the Latin guys coming to the States, but I think it applies anywhere at any affiliate in professional baseball.
No, I think it's key to get these guys locked into what's going to be their routines and what feels right. And they kind of start taking care of themselves too, because a lot of times, if not, they're coming and asking questions for simple things that they can have locked in on their own. And it's not that you don't want to be willing and hands on with them, but a lot of this stuff, like it's things that they can build into their own system and make it a part of their program and what it is that they're doing. So yeah, I agree 100%. And I mean, you see it if you're around for a spring training, in the mornings, everybody's in there with their balls and their stuff and they're doing stuff. And then once extended comes in, that same hour in the mornings, there's like maybe two guys in there, and you're like, wow, what happened there? And it's because your older guys have their routines, they have their things set in place, they know what they like to do, they know what they like to do in the mornings. And then those younger guys, they haven't necessarily built that yet. They haven't necessarily established what it is that they like to do. They think they could just kind of get up and go. That being said, some of these other guys are a little bit older now and things are starting to hurt. But the I think that you kind of see that type of stuff in the younger and the older athlete and stuff. But no, I think it's important to get these guys stuck into a routine and kind of get them used to what it is that they like to do.
Right on, man. So you've been around a while with the Mets. I know you worked the fall league. You were there when I was there, and you've got some different experiences. What is your best professional baseball story or memory or experience that you've had thus far?
I think for me, the experience was probably the fall league. I think it was a great opportunity to kind of get out there and be a part of that. Being able to work with different organizations. We had 5 different teams with us, or 4 different teams, including the Mets, making it 5. But it was a good time. I had never been out to Arizona. I had never seen any of the facilities out there, the complexes. I didn't really know what to expect. I like the outdoors a lot. So kind of getting over there and seeing everything that Arizona had to offer was one in itself a great experience. The ton of kayaking and hiking and stuff. And then outside of that, just the being around that type of baseball, like it was a lot higher level of baseball. The athletes themselves, those guys were locked in, and being able to see a lot of those guys now playing the big leagues and stuff, it was a good experience. And the facilities were incredible. I mean, that in itself, outside of Florida, like seeing that type of difference, it was big. It was night and day. So I think for me, that was one of the biggest ones. And then honestly, too, this year having the opportunity to go to New York and be a part of that summer camp, while things were, it wasn't in times that we necessarily wanted to be in with COVID and everything going, but it was a really cool experience to kind of go over there and be a part of that. Work at Citi Field and stuff. I remember there was one night where I was running across the field because we were shutting everything down. It was probably like 10:30 at night, but all the lights were off. And I stood in center field and I just didn't take no photos, nothing. I just stood there and I just looked around and I just kind of did a big 360. And it was really cool to just take in, that experience and what was happening and being there. Like, that's the type of stuff that you don't really get to experience and that not everybody gets the chance to do. So, those 2 opportunities I would say were probably the biggest in my career thus far. Hopefully there's more to come, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had both of those experiences, so I definitely will put my 2 cents in, and we can kind of discuss it further. In terms of the fall league, man, like if any strength coach can get the chance to work the fall league, you got to do it. I mean, like you said, first of all, Arizona itself is unbelievable, right? Like I went out there, my wife came out with me, we loved it. We ended up moving out there, and we've been out there the past couple off seasons, and we loved it. But just the exposure to being around other organizations and you get to build a network, and it's not just other strength coaches, right? There's, coaches and front office and coordinators from all these different orgs that you get to meet and interact with. The level of baseball is so high there. It's all prospects. It's all guys that, like you said, we worked 2016, I think it was, right? Like there's a lot of guys in the big leagues now from that fall league. And that's kind of that's what they take their pride in, is like, hey, when you play in the fall league, you have a great chance of being in the big leagues. Now, did you have a great chance of being in the big leagues without playing in the fall league? Maybe, but there's that relationship there, and it's just a really, really good time. And I have no negatives about the fall league. Like every bit of it was awesome. So if there's any coaches listening that get the chance, like fully do it. And then in terms of summer camp, like I felt the same way. I was at Fenway. I've been to a few games at Fenway, but I've never been behind the scenes, in the weight room, in the kitchen, in the training room, the locker room. And like, I can remember I had a similar moment to you where we had one of our first inter squads, right? And I walked behind home plate to get to the other dugout, and I just kind of stopped and just looked out, and I'm like, this ballpark is amazing. And there's no fans there or anything, right? It's empty. Like, you got your guys on both sides of the line, and they're kind of jawing at each other just because they all know each other. And you're like, this is awesome, man. And like you said, not everybody gets that chance. And you have to really, sometimes I think we get lost in the grind of every day in professional baseball. And you have to take those moments and just kind of take a step back and look around. And like, at the end of the day, this is an awesome job. It's really cool. It's just fun to be a part of. And sometimes, like I said, you get in a rut where you get a little lost, and it's August and you're out of playoff contention, and it's the Florida State League and it's 100 degrees and there's no fans. And you're like, why am I doing this? But like, you take that step back and you're like, we have a sign in our weight room. I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, there's somebody out there who would love to have your worst day. And it's 100%. Like, our worst day on the job is better than a lot of people's best days, especially now. Like, people are losing their jobs, losing family members. Like, it's a crazy time. And like, we get to work in baseball. We have the opportunity to work here and work with high level athletes all the time. Or in your case, like guys that are just starting on that path to their dream. And like, it's, at the end of the day, it's a cool thing, right? It may sound corny or cliche or whatever, but like, it's awesome. You take a step back and you're like, this is what we do for a living to help these guys fulfill their childhood dreams. Like, it's a cool thing for me.
No, we used to have an old coordinator. His name was Nitro, and he used to say that we do our job in our PJs. You know what I'm saying? Run around in t-shirts and shorts and stuff. And he would always laugh about that. But it was one of those things that, I mean, one, we're extremely blessed to be in the opportunity and be given the chances that we have. And those types of experiences and stuff, like, not a lot of people get to do those types of things. And then even with small stuff like that, like going out to Arizona, like I did the same. I got to bring out my wife, and I mean, we spent time out there and stuff. That was a lot of fun. Going to the Dominican, I mean, I'm going to an island. It's beautiful out there. You're driving in the mornings and the sunset's just coming out, and you start to see like that sun glistening over the water. It's early, but I mean, I get to the complex. They got coffee made. The lady already knows my name. She's got fruit already set up for me for breakfast. Like, I mean, those types of things, like, it's a blessing, man. The kids have a lot of fun, and you got to enjoy it. I mean, sometimes we stress about the hours and everything that we got going on, but like you said, I mean, we're in a weight room or we're on a ball field. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. So
100%, man.
Yeah.
So what do you believe in within strength and conditioning that others think you are crazy for believing?
I always mess around with the guys, but I'm a huge guy on comfort. So anything that, if I could slide my shoe in, I ain't gotta wear laces, or if I got short shorts, the guys always pick on me, but I always got my short shorts and my shoes that I slip into. So I say that's the key to success and the key to strength. If you can see that quad popping, you guys are good. So we always laugh and we mess around with that. But I mean, not really much. I'm really big in the meat and potatoes of everything. Your bench, squat, deadlift. Like, that's just what I came up in and stuff. So I don't really vary that much off of that. But I wouldn't say I really think in anything that's too crazy. I just buy into my simplicity of things and get the work done.
Yeah, I think the key there, right, is like simplicity doesn't necessarily mean it's easy, right? Like, there are simple things, but doing the simple things really well is sometimes really hard to do. And if you buy into those and you do it, I saw a tweet or something the other day. I think it was, who was it? I can't remember. I'm going to mess up whoever it was, but it was like, you do the same 10 to 20 exercises your entire life, and that's what strength training is. And you do them well and you do them consistent, and that's how you make gains. And I can look back and be like, I've been deadlifting, squatting, benching, doing rows and chin-ups and some sort of carries for as long as I can remember. That's just what my program is. And then when I deviate away from that, I'm like, I got to get back to what I like to do. And like you said, my meat and potatoes. So I'm there with you. Maybe it's crazy that we don't think it's crazy. I don't know. I'm sure somebody will think we're crazy for sticking to the big guns like that, but it is what it is, I guess.
Nah, you stay consistent, and you stay consistent for a long time, and you're gonna have success. You know what I'm saying? You can start coming up with a bunch of different stuff and trying different things here and there, but if you're not consistent with your work and what it is that you're doing on a daily basis, you know what I'm saying, you're not going to get anywhere. So it doesn't need to get that crazy. It doesn't need to be out that far outside the box. Hit your end ranges, hold things, you know, work through those patterns, full ranges of motion, whatever the case may be. But you work consistently and you work hard consistently, and it's going to pay off at the end.
Yeah, I'd say probably about 80 to 85% of my own personal programming and training is just basic stuff, full range of motion, general strength training movements. And then 15 to 20% of the time, give or take, like I'll explore a new exercise or like work through some functional range conditioning stuff, like something different that, you know, I can test, but like I'm not going deep end 80% novelty with 20% meat and potatoes. It's the other way around for me. Like most of my stuff is that big meat and potatoes, bang for your buck. And then occasionally I'll throw some stuff in. Hey, I saw this on Instagram. Maybe I'll give it a try. Or one of my mentors is doing this, so maybe it has some value. Maybe it doesn't. You know, you read a book or you take a course. Like, I'll try it. But I personally don't think that we need to get so far down a rabbit hole that we forget about strength training. And sometimes I think we do, right? Like we get so into like sports specific training and exercises that we forget, like, hey, we can still do deadlifts, we can still do squats, we can still do lunges and pull-ups and all these other things that we know give us a good return on our investment, and we're just kind of forgetting them sometimes.
No, 100%, 100%. You just, like I said, stick to the consistent stuff and work through that. There's a lot of new things out there, and hey, they work. You know what I'm saying? I'd be lying if I said that our program looked the same way it did when I first started 8 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It's not the truth, but those key elements of it are still there. You know what I'm saying? You build around that and you pick and take, but I mean, that's how you develop. That's how, one, we get better, and two, that's how the program continues to get better. You know, there's going to be things that develop over time, and it should develop over time, you know? So yeah, I think it's in progress.
I'm there with you, man. I had this conversation with our Hefe today. Just, it's always a work in progress to me, right? Like we've made strides. And like you said, you look back from where we were, you know, I started in the org 5-6 years ago now. Like our program is not the same, right? But we still have a lot of similar elements, like you said, and we've just kind of put a few things here, a few things there, test this out, test that out. But I don't think you can forget about that identity that, you know, our program is our program because it's our program, right? Like if you get so far away that you can't even identify your own program, then that's when you start running into issues.
No, and I mean, you sit back and you take a look at things, each different transition or each year or whatever, but you know, you sit there with your staff and you guys kind of start to think about what worked and what didn't work. You know, what did we like about this? What didn't we necessarily like about that? You know, different exercises and stuff. How can we make this better? And that's how it continues to develop. So yeah, those same things, those same staple points are there all the way through. But you know, as you kind of develop and continue to move, you know, you transition with certain things and you leave others behind. You know, before you know it, you got what makes you you.
Yeah, I think auditing your program is a really important aspect of getting better. And part of that is really scary, right? Because you have to look in the mirror, you have to look at your staff, you have to look at your program, and you have to dissect it. And you have to be able to say, this didn't work, right?
Yeah.
And that's very hard to do. You want to think that every time you put something on paper, it's going to work. Everything you do is going to make the athlete better. And honestly, like where we are, like we always are trying to put the athlete in a good spot. We're always trying to make them better. We're always trying to do everything we can to improve them, right? Like I never go to work and say, how can I make this guy worse today, right? Like you don't do that, right? You go to work and you say, how can I make this guy better? And so you always have the good intentions, but it's hard to look at your program and be like, this did not work. We need to scratch it. And it takes a lot to put your ego aside, put your staff's ego aside, and just say, hey, we just need to make this better. We need to get rid of this. We like this. Okay, now what are we going to try to do this next season that's going to push us over the top, right? And it's hard to do sometimes. It really is. It's just that how it is.
I think, what you said there, we're putting our egos to the side. I think that plays a big role in it. There's a lot of times where guys don't want to necessarily admit that they were wrong or that they were doing something wrong. That as time goes on, like you're gonna notice those certain things. And like you said, what we're trying to do each and every year and every day is to make that athlete better. So what do we need to do to make that happen? And there's going to be things that stand out. There's going to be key points there where you're like, you know what, this doesn't work, and we got to scratch this. There's new technology that comes out that you start to realize different things. You're like, oh wow, like we were doing that wrong the whole time. And not to say that has or hasn't happened, but those things along our process, like you're going to see that. I found an old box that had like old programming from when I was back in St. Leo with Corey, and seeing the stuff that we were writing for like our baseball team, I was like, geez, what were we thinking? And at the time, we thought we were killing it. Guys were in there, they were pumping weight, they were doing good, they were working hard, they got better. Thankfully nobody got hurt, but you sit back on it now and you're like, wow, what were we thinking then? So, and it's just it's a process. You continue to develop, and 10 years from now, we'll probably look at our programming from today and be like, wow, what's going on there? But, you continue to build off of that. That's all it is. Continued progression. You continue to move forward, and you're going to keep getting better.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know yet, right? Like in 5 years,
Yeah.
you might know something that you don't know now that's going to make your programming better in 5 years, but you don't know it yet. And you have to be willing to accept that. Nobody knows everything, but the key is like you have to be willing to learn, and you have to filter things. And if you're just set in your ways, there's no chance the program's changing. But at least if you're taking information in, you're filtering it, you're discussing with mentors, and like we said, auditing your stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
at least you have a chance to make those programs better. And that's what I tell the guys is like, listen, I'm going to do everything I can to help you. And everything within my knowledge base that I have right now is what I'm putting on this paper and what I'm putting into you to try to make you better. And if I fail you, I'm sorry. And I'm going to, right? I'm going to try to figure out why I failed you and what I don't know yet that could have helped you. Right. And it's hard to do that sometimes, right? We all want to be confident in front of players, and we want to say like, hey, I know this is going to work for you, but
Mm-hmm.
it might not. And it's sometimes hard to put your ego aside. It really is. Like we're all meatheads. We're all, most of us are type A personalities. We're very dominant. We want things to work our way. And when they don't, it's hard to accept that sometimes, I guess.
No, yeah. And then when you don't know something, you don't really understand that, it's being willing to say, one, to admit it, and two, I've had times where athletes come in asking questions that maybe I don't necessarily know the answer to that. But what I do tell them is like, you know what, we're going to figure it out, and we'll figure it out together, and we're going to make it happen. And then you build off of that. You know what I'm saying? Now you know something new that you can add to your toolbox, whatever the case, whatever that is. But if there's one thing I've learned along the way, at the end of the day, that barbell's still going to be there. I'll tell you that. So you can't shy away from that.
100%, 100%. You have to be humble enough. And honestly, for me, that's helped me a lot is like a guy comes to me and is like, hey, have you heard of this? I've been trying it. And I'm like, honestly, I haven't, but I'll
Mm-hmm.
look it up. And then I look it up the next day I come in, I'm like, hey, so I looked up your stuff, and they're like, oh, this guy really does care about me and
Yeah.
what I'm saying. And he wants to learn this and collab with me. Right. And it's that all of a sudden it's like, this light bulb turns on that, hey, I can go to this guy when I have questions. I don't have to be afraid that he's going to, bark at me or tell me I'm wrong or stupid or whatever. He's willing to listen and try to learn.
That gets them to buy into your processes as well, because now they have that understanding that, okay, I can come and I can talk to him. We can be open about what's going on. You know, a lot of times these guys, they just want a little bit of input into what it is that they're doing. It's their profession, it's their career, and a lot of times, at least back in the day, sometimes it might have just been force fed to them. This is what you're doing. You're not doing that. You're doing this X, Y, and Z, and that was it. And I don't feel like it should be like that. You know what I'm saying? They should have a little bit of input into what it is that they're doing, and we can find a middle ground. If we're gonna do some type of squat, well, then it could be a variation of either or, but it'll be a squat pattern. If it's gonna be a lunge, we can talk about that, but it's gonna be, and you just continue to build off of that. But yeah, like what you said there, if guys can come and openly talk about different things that they've seen or what it is that they're doing, and you can find that middle ground, they're going to buy in a lot more, because one, they're going to see that you care, and then two, they're going to see that the program is built around them. and what it is it makes them feel right and makes them feel good. So if you can build off of that, you're still getting what you want out of the program, and they kind of feel like they have a little bit more input. It's going to get them to buy into that process a whole lot more.
Yeah, I think that's a very unique aspect of professional baseball, is that the program seems to be a lot more collaborative, especially the higher you go and the more the deeper players are in their career and the older they are, versus the college setting of like, this is your program, do what I say or you're gone. Like, if you don't do this, like, you're going to run extra at practice later or something like that, where here it seems a lot in the professional setting, it seems a lot more collaborative than do as I say type of deal.
Yeah, that being said, though, in the Dominican, we do need to be a little careful with that, just because these guys are so young. They don't necessarily know what the difference is between the guy that they're working out with or lifting with. Maybe someone that's just putting stuff together. And it's their first time really experiencing weight room and weight room exposure and being a part of lifts and stuff. So that's why we just really focus in on, our basic key elements, our basic movements, and hitting those end ranges and patterns, and just building off of that. I think what you said is 100%. Like, once they're later into their career and they're further down that line, then as a strength coach, you could definitely have those open conversations about what it is that both parties are looking for, and build off of that.
Yeah, I think you probably have to earn that right to have that collaborative approach, right? Like, if you're a young guy and, I can't trust you to be in the weight room on time, or you're not reliable, and you show up for gym bus every time, or whatever it is, like, I think you have to earn that ability to collaborate. But that's, most guys that are older, and honestly, those guys that move up through the system and, get to the big leagues and stick in the big leagues, most of them have their routines. They know what works for their bodies. They're very in touch. And it's a lot more like, hey, how can I help you? Let's tweak something here. Or, hey, what do you think about this? Versus like, hey, you need to do this to get better.
All right, everybody, that concludes this episode with Alex. I hope you enjoyed this one. This is part one of what will be a 2-part series. Our interview was just well over an hour, and there's just a ton of really good information. So I wanted to make it a little bit more digestible, and so I broke it into 2 parts. Part 2 will talk more about his life as a coordinator and how it differs from being at an affiliate, as well as some continuing education things and some other stuff like that. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you'll check out the second one when it comes out. 3 things that I took from Alex in this one: put your ego aside and audit everything that you're doing. Don't forget about the basics of strength training, and prepare your athletes to be self-sufficient with their routines as they move up to the next levels. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.